Jesus told the disciples a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, "In a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city there was a widow who kept coming to him and saying, 'Grant me justice against my opponent.' For a while he refused, but later he said to himself, 'Though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming.' And the Lord said, 'Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?'" The Gospel of the Lord. Last week, I preached with you about about the times we experience God's presence. So I'm grateful that the lectionary and also the Gospel of Luke, because we're just following through it, the way Luke chose to share the stories of Jesus, gives us this very next week a sort of a story about not experiencing God's presence. It's true that by the end of the gospel, Jesus says, "Will he not come quickly?" And yet the meat of the story is about this woman, the parable of this woman coming again and again and again, making her plea day by day with no response. And in my life, there have been seasons where I felt a continual sense of guidance from God. I say seasons, like, defined by a certain place and a certain set of relationships, certain set of habits for one time in my life. Some seasons when I absolutely felt a sense of regular guidance. High school, the Episcopal Service Corps, when I was serving in that. There have also been seasons when I really felt a lack of guidance, sense of presence. I think of the first year of my campus ministry leadership in Keene, just this kind of continual decline in a sense of presence. And then I thought about the current season that I'm in. What would define that? A new baby who rarely sleeps through the night, and colds and coughs and stomach bugs and conjunctivitis and COVID and teething, and sort of any number of those simultaneously, and house projects from doing the dishes to sewer drains backing up, and sometimes watching too much TV. And a couple months ago, in this current season, which looks like that, I realized, I looked up and I said, oh, again, it's a dry season. And I'm not really feeling a sense of God's guidance. It's hard to hear God's hope right now. We actually have two characters in the scripture today who are having a similar season, because there's the widow in the parable that Jesus is telling, who is again and again appealing for justice and does not have it. And in the Hebrew Bible reading, we heard about Jacob. And Jacob is in a season where he is actually returning to the land and to the family of his birth. He's been away a long time. And he has no idea how this is going to go. He's actually almost really on the verge of being fearful for his life. And it was really quick in the first couple sentences there, but he's just sent his whole family and everything he owns across the river ahead of him so that he can be alone and get a little quiet before this reunion. And in that aloneness, someone comes upon him, a mysterious figure, but someone that he seems to know, seemingly God. And they wrestle through the night. Even as they have this long, kind of intimate wrestling, still, Jacob remains separated, saying he doesn't know this person's name. Can't recognize God if this is God. So both of these figures, I'm getting just a little bit of an echo, just in case that's not coming through up there. Both of these figures, when they don't get what they need, they don't get justice, they don't get the blessing, they persist. The widow is relentless. And that's right. Jesus is making a parable. She's not an actual person, but Jesus's instruction through her character is persist. And Jacob, in his own lived experience, his example is persist. Let me go. No, I will not let you go. He's in this kind of stalemate. You imagine just that body tiredness. Neither can overcome the other. No, I will not let you go until you bless me. And both of them receive. And eventually, Jacob does. He gets a blessing, and not only a blessing, but a new name. In this season of mine of kind of a diminished sense of direct guidance from God, I've been trying some things a little like these two characters. My own little try at praying always and not losing heart. I've kept up my usual cries to God. Table grace and night prayers have been pretty steady for me, so I've kept those up. And also I've wrestled for a blessing by re-engaging with morning prayer and re-engaging with spiritual readings from other Christians, reading other people who've been in this kind of season. And I was lucky enough to have a friend agree to pray with me weekly, a silent prayer together each week. And the results, to the extent you can use the word results when it comes to prayer, the results have been a mixed bag. I have felt a little bit more of God's presence. I was in images and in a little bit more peace, which is no small thing. But especially, I've had a sort of experience of ruminating, when a ruminant animal ruminates, it's almost, there's like regurgitation as part of that process, right? It comes and just kind of a mixing up and a chewing on the thing, and it maybe with along with some stones in the belly in some animals, or there's and it's a fermenting process. That's how the breaking down happens there, and this is how my prayer is feeling. Like I'm bringing my prayer, and then alongside it is this word from a mentor or from this other Christian somewhere in the world who's written about their life, and I brought that alongside, or this prior experience that I can remember having of God, and they're ruminating. And the prayer is becoming something else. There's a fermentation happening. There are, after all, plenty of words that God has already spoken. I don't necessarily need a new word from God every day if I can listen to those that God has already spoken and borrow them. I've been thinking, in light of the scriptures this week, What does it even mean? It's great. Okay, we get to the conclusion of these stories. The widow received justice. What does that mean? Jacob received a blessing and a new name. Well, that's good. I bet he just got back to his family who he'd been estranged from for 2 decades and said, hey guys, I just got a blessing and a new name. Oh, good. Welcome home. No, come on. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like and feel like? How do I live that? And that's the ruminating is maybe pointing me towards, it's helping me to ask that and to receive something about that. How does this actually, how do I live this? So I'll name a couple of ruminations that have kind of been shepherding me towards some new understandings. I heard the voice, one of the things that came forward was the voice of Cynthia, who I got to do Bible study with once for an extended period in Portsmouth. And she was about 90 at that time, and she's since died. She was an ER nurse for her whole life. And Cynthia would say, I make sure I see a blessing every day. And I've heard that and been reminded that, as she said, I make sure I see a miracle every day. And I've heard that and been reminded miracles are happening around me. If I'm not seeing them, I ought to, look a different direction. And similarly, I heard a story from a friend's prayer group. One member of that prayer group, she said, spoke up and said, well, I've never experienced God. And they all prayed for her and prayed with her and over her that she would have an experience of God. And she came 2 weeks later, she came back to the group and said, I experienced God. And I thought, did God suddenly decide, okay, well, everyone prayed, so I'll show up now? Or did she look in a different way because of that prayer and that expectation that she was cultivating? And I don't know, I truly don't know the answer, but I tend to think the latter. And so from both of these ruminations, part of my deepening peace comes from this reminder that God is very near. God is around and filling the world with miracles. And so this praying always that Jesus advocates, it's partly about renewing my expectations. In my ruminations, I've also been accompanied by the memory of Mother Teresa, who, except for one particularly notable kind of 5-week span where she really felt God's presence, Mother Teresa said that she experienced a convicting emptiness when searching heavenward in prayer. And in that same vein, closer to home, I remembered Brother Curtis from the Society of St. John the Evangelist down in Cambridge. It's a society of Episcopal monks there. And he had early on in his life a powerful experience of God's enfolding presence. And then not for decades. And he prayed and hoped to receive that again. And as I remember, as he recounted it, that there was a day came when he did feel that again. He experienced that unfolding presence again. And then it was gone again since. And these are two, and I look at these two people who are models of the Jesus way, who are inspiring examples of how to live in God's love and show God's light in the world. And they do not need a daily feeling recharge from Jesus. So part of praying always and not losing heart, I have ruminated, is knowing that a faithful life, a beautiful life, does not necessarily require the steady supply of feeling moments with God. I can know God's action by being active myself, based on all the divine revelations we've already received, all the messages already jotted down by God through the hearts of others. So I've been reflecting that I'm receiving a lot from God, even if not much of it feels direct. Probably everyone here has had the experience that we grow a lot in times where we're forced to strive. It's not always welcome. But Jesus' parable today is about what good striving looks like. To help us to strive rightly, maybe we can say that good striving isn't about having a longer to-do list or checking off more to-do boxes. Good striving isn't about building a monument or having a monumental car. Good striving isn't necessarily about a promotion or upgrading your spouse. These are all options. Good striving is about praying always and not losing heart. Praying always and not losing heart. Praying and living as a Christian can be faithful even when we do not experience God's presence. And also, sometimes prayer can change how we're listening, how we're looking, so that we may find that what counts as God's presence is different than what we thought. We may begin to see miracles that were right next to us along the way. Surely, concluded Jesus, surely if even the unjust judge relented, then God, who gave us birth, will hear us and grant us justice, will give us a blessing. Surely God is very near us through words that come direct and through words that we borrow from another. Thanks be to God.